Morning, everybody. Hope you're well. A little bit of stuff to talk about this morning, so I thought I would put together a quick dog walk video. Once again, the weather is fine up here in the Lincolnshire Wolds. It's like being in Italy. Not Italy yesterday. My mum's on holiday in Sorrento. Pissed it down all day. Couldn't get out of the hotel to go to Pompeii. Me, I was sat eating pork pie in my shorts and nothing else on my garden furniture at midday. So it just goes to show, doesn't it? You don't have to fly abroad to enjoy the best of the weather. My dog's loving it, although he is unlikely to go very far. So I am going to have to get down to brass tacks. Let's get down to business and talk about Pio Connor. So last night on the podcast, Ben and Emily did a fantastic job of talking about Pio Connor, and I am definitely making out as if I took the time to watch that. Alas, I did not. I was too busy getting balls deep in Jeremy Clarkson's farm. But I'm sure it was great. Ben and Emily both know what they're talking about. But you know me, I like to add my 2 penneth worth as well. And I know that sometimes people like to get on board with these dog walks. So a couple of thoughts around Paudie going to Reading. First of all, obviously wish him the best of luck. He's served as diligently throughout his time here. He's been a solid player for us, a solid player of the year. Candidate every year he's been here. I think he won it last year, might be wrong, but certainly a solid candidate every year that he's been here. And it's just Regan Poole all over again. Player comes in from the division below, really impresses, captain, leader, all that sort of stuff, and then leaves for pastures new. And pastures new does not always mean moving up the divisions. Pastures new sometimes can mean moving to a bigger club. And make no mistake about it, Reading are a bigger club, pure and simple. And if anybody here has kind of commented sideways step, which I know a lot of people have, in terms of levels, yes, but it would be a sideways step if he'd gone to Doncaster. It'd be exactly the same step, and we would consider ourselves at the moment what a club in a better position than Doncaster or Bradford or AFC Wimbledon, because they've just come up. We'd consider ourselves a bigger club than Mansfield because we get more supporters. If Paudie Connor had gone to Mansfield, it would be the same sidestep as him moving to Reading. The fact is, Reading are a bigger club, with their new owner now willing to back them. Rob Couhig was backing Wickham when they went up into the Championship. They're going to have the money. And do you know what? Of all of the clubs in our division, of all 23 teams other than us, if I had to have picked one for him to go to, probably have picked Reading, because they've been through such shit over the past few seasons. And I think that their fans have always conducted themselves remarkably well. Like final day of the season, Wrexham, they've come from the National League. The fans are strutting through the fan zone, Billy Big Bollocks, all that sort of stuff. There's no solidarity there. But with Reading fans, I think we all feel a certain degree of solidarity. And that if our club had been run into the ground by a rogue owner, we'd feel the same with their protests and all that sort of thing. So as a club, they're a club I'm quite fond of. You've got a lot of staff there who worked with not getting paid. The 2 years in a row, they barely signed anybody at all. When they first dropped into our division, they signed a couple of players, and they were under embargo. They've hardly signed anybody at all. So they've had their tough times. And part of me kind of thinks, well, if I want any other team to go up out of our division, it'd probably be Reading this year, just because, first of all, it's pretty crap away day, isn't it, trying to get out of that car park and everything. But secondly, just because of everyone, they probably deserve it the most. Certainly of any big club that have ever come down into our division. Charlton fans weren't bad. They didn't give it Billy Big Bollocks. And I haven't seen it as much from Reading either. So in terms of a club to go to, not going to begrudge him that. Hopefully he fits the style of play that Noel Hunt wants to play. Interesting point. I'm sure many of you may or may not, or may know this rather, but Stephen Hunt, the agent, is Noel Hunt's brother, the Reading manager. So there's a real connection there, which may have helped get the deal done. But there are a couple of little phenomenon around Paudie's transfer that I really wanted to pick up on. And the first one is the number of people now online who are saying things like, he wasn't that good anyway, or he's limited in this position, or he gets sent off too much, or he gets this and that. And I suppose I'm almost going to that kind of that social media criticism again. But so I'm not going to name names, but I saw people yesterday saying, "Oh, he's not that great, or he's limited here, or told you he wasn't a championship player," and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. Same that I heard, by the way, of Regan Poole, who's now a championship player with Portsmouth. But the same sort of people that had, when it was announced that he was going to leave, it's kind of like big loss, need to replace, yada yada yada. And I've noticed that, when somebody comes in, somebody leaves, there are kind of two base reactions, both of which, by the way, piss me off when a player leaves. One is instantly downplaying that player. He wasn't that good. These are the attributes he lacked. He won't do well there. It's blah, 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 playing the player down. The other one, which I really hate, is to take care of him. Oh, God, he's not your fucking child. Take care of him. Take good care of the star boy, all that sort of stuff. Oh, my God, makes me feel physically sick. Literally, right now, I feel like I should be sick after just saying those things. And all of that comes out, doesn't it? At the end of the day, the news that he was signing for Reading was non-news. The only bit of that news was the club. We knew he was moving somewhere else. As soon as there was an he was allegedly talking to Derby last week, which proved not to be the case, or it may have been, but proved not to be the move he made. It was always that kind of, we knew he was going. We were clinging on it a little bit, and one or two people are like, well, he's going to be hard to replace. Is he? We play a 4-4-2. I'm not playing down Pio Connor, but we played 5, 6, 7, 8 games without him last season because of his suspensions. And I mean, if anybody wants to be critical of me about kind of saying that he's not it's not a huge blow, and it is, it's a blow. The captain goes, all that. But honestly, listen back to the last 10, 12 weeks of podcasts that I've done. I've been quite clear that I think that the red cards and the suspension with the yellow cards they've just been a bit too much for me. And I'm not saying liability, because he absolutely isn't. He's had a good season, those flick-ons for the goals, the headers. He's a good character. He will be a loss. But at the same time, a captain that serves 3 suspensions in a season, albeit I think 2 one-game suspensions, or 1-game suspension, a 2-game, and then a 3-game or something like that. It's just a little bit too much. And for me, you've got to have a settled back 4. And I know Michael Skubala likes to tinker and he likes to play, but next season you give Wickens, you give George Charlie, well, this way, mates, it's too warm for you. We give George Wickens a chance by having a settled back 4 in front of him. And whether that's, it could realistically be Hamer, Jackson, Dariqua, and one other. And actually, the money we're then saved on Paudie can go elsewhere in the side. I'm not saying we won't sign a centre-back, but I would say that the pressure to sign a centre-back, having gone from 3 centre-backs to 2, is slightly reduced. We've got Hamer, we've got Jackson, we've got Monsma. Likelihood is probably sign one more. But I would like us to try and find a settled pairing in there. And I do wonder if the uncertainty around O'Connor meant that we triggered the Jacko extension. I think there was a belief potentially that Jacko was moving back up north. I think his family have headed back up north. I may or may not be wrong on that, but it's certainly what I was led to believe. So, I think everybody thought he was leaving. I'm really pleased that Jacko isn't. And I think at times in a 3, he sometimes looked a little shaky. I think in the flat back 4 at the end of the season, alongside Tom Hamer when Paudie was out, thought he looked good. So I think we'll be all right. I really do. And then so finally talking about this level, like, oh, he's not championship quality because he's gone to Reading. I don't buy that either. Chris did some great numbers on the podcast the other week, and so few championship clubs buy out of League One. Now, whether that's a lack of trust, I don't know. The jump between League One and the Championship is almost as big as the jump between the Championship and the Premier League. And I think that's proven when you look at managers who make that jump. The likes of, for instance, Matt Taylor, Stephen Schumacher have struggled, Danny Cowley. It's a big jump to have to make. Matt Bloomfield didn't really do it with Luton last season. The Championship tends to be the entry point for a lot of foreign coaches, foreign players. And League One feels more like it's getting left behind. The Championship is beginning to feel more like a Premier League 2. And the 3rd tier is beginning to feel like the natural successor to the old First Division. In that every year the title winners are different. Okay, of course they are, because they go up. But every year the narratives are different. And sadly, every year, the prices are going up. I've seen this morning Huddersfield looking at a £3 million deal for Ethan Galbraith. I'm looking at Aaron Collins moving to MK Dons. And by the way, this is for about the 4th division. But is it going to be the first £1 million deal in the 4th division? I think Bolton paid 850,000 for Collins, and MK Dons are thought to be breaking that. Wow, that's massive. But what it actually means is that the players that are swirling around these divisions, Pio Connor, Sean Rowan, Ethan Galbraith, Aaron Collins, you have to look back at, okay, it wasn't this division technically, but Joe Taylor, Dion Charles. It feels like this whole different world. And to say for a player like Paudie, who's gone to a club like Reading, that he's not good enough to step up to the Championship, you would argue that actually that club have seen him as good enough to, because Reading will be, in my opinion, expecting to be top 6. And I saw lots of people saying, I don't think they'll be there this season. They were knocking on the door of the top 6 last season, and they weren't able to make a single signing. So now that they've got some money behind them, with the same coaching staff, the same ethos, the same approach, I can't see how they won't be top 6 this season. I don't know how they won't be, honestly. For me, they're in a much better position to do that, given their experiences, than a Peterborough who've got to start fresh, or a Rotherham who've got to start fresh. You could argue, even more so than a Huddersfield, who might be spending big, but have still got that unknown element of Lee Grant. Not managed in this division before. Not managed at senior level before. It's a big question mark. What's the question mark over Reading? In honesty, what's the question mark? They were battling for the top 6 last season. They've had 2 years, because the season before they finished lower mid-table, but without the points deduction would have been much further up. They've had players not paid. They've had staff not paid. They've had stuff going on off the field that's a massive, massive distraction. And here they are emerging through it. Same coaching style. Noel Hunt took over from Ruben Sellers and just carried the good work on. They were the only really bad game that they had last season, from all the bad spell they had, was immediately after Sellers left when we beat them. But after that, they were excellent. And now they can add players. Now they can add value. In my mind, they should be one of the highest priced teams, along with the Bolton, because Bolton, bear in mind, big-ish clear out. There's no Dion Charles, there's no Aaron Collins. They've got to go out. They've got to buy. Not entirely convinced whether Stephen Schumacher's the man or not. Again, that change of manager, that uncertainty, Noel Hunt proved that he is. So I actually think that by moving to Reading, Paudie is as close to being Championship quality without actually stepping into the Championship. And if he steps into the Championship, by the way, if he goes to Stoke, what is he? A League One defender stepping up with a huge question mark over him. And let's face it, Stoke, as with other teams he may have moved to, the likes of Hull, likely to be involved in a battle at the bottom. He goes to Reading on a 4-year deal, and they're likely to be involved at the top end of this division. And what is he? He's a top-end League One defender with goals and assists. He plays their opening game. If he's fit, in my opinion, he plays 46 games for them next season, and they're going to be in the title hunt. So he is Championship quality. They must believe it, because to give him a 4-year deal, they're not planning on hanging around in this division for 4 years. They're planning on being in the Championship. And anyone that listens to the podcast will hopefully recall a few weeks ago me saying his likely move will be to a team who can match his promotion aspirations. And Reading will next season. And I hope people bookmark this, looking for me to fail, because I genuinely believe, I'll put my name to it now, I genuinely believe that Reading will be top 4 next season. And I think they'll be a really good shout for promotion. I might even back them to the tune of a tenner, just to say it. So that's that. The other thing I wanted to mention, and it's only because if I don't, I'm sure Nick Hawkesbury's going to come around to my house and kick my ass, is Jackson Tomac. I did do an article on it online. I don't know if Nick Hawkesbury can read or not, but he keeps messaging me saying, is it going to get mentioned on the podcast? I haven't listened to last night's podcast, so I don't know. Jackson was the youngest ever scorer in the FA Youth Cup for us, just moved to Nottingham Forest as an academy graduate, I think under 14 level, something like that. My understanding is that we do have some very solid compensation coming for him. I don't really know what Nick wants me to say, to be honest. Our academy is there to provide professional footballers. Now, whether they end up with us or whether they end up playing for Bromley like Samuel Long does, or whether they end up playing for Huddersfield or wherever they go, our aim is to produce footballers. So to produce a football at that age, or to have spotted talent that by that time that age comes around, they're going to move to a Premier League club, is just another testament to the fact the academy is doing what we want it to do. The players that come through will not always play for Lincoln City. Now, I did the article the other week about our most successful academy graduates, and I think starting down around 20 and 19, we were looking at players with 6 or 7 games and a couple of goals. I think Gary King was 21st, and that's over the last 45 years. That's from 1980. So I think it's worth noting that Jackson Tomacs, I think I can hear a car coming, the Jackson Tomacs, the Scott Loaches, the Robert Taylors. Yeah, we have produced players in the past who have gone on to better things without Lincoln City. But for him to come through at that age, I think, and move for a decent sum is good. So yeah, there you go, Nick. I've spoken about it. So that will be the end of my dog walk right now. Hopefully we're not all too disappointed about Pio Connor. If you want a little bit more in depth, please do feel free to go. Please do feel free to go to the podcast and have a listen to what Ben and Emily said. We will be back. You never know, potentially live between now and next week. But if not, the podcast will be back next week, and I will do some more dog walk videos. In the meantime, up the imps.